All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. You know, my mom had a Facebook page when she was alive. Mm-hmm. And that Facebook page is still there. I never tried to undo it. I don't know. There's probably a way to undo it. I don't know. But I set it up for her, and I still get notes, messages, and stuff when somebody leaves her a note. Mm-hmm. And it is interesting that people write to her, even though she's been gone now for 6 years almost.
Yes,
almost 6 years. But people do that, and I often wonder, do the dearly departed actually get messages from us? I don't know. I mean, I know some of you have an opinion on that. I think I do too. I think they do. I'll kind of go out on a limb. I think they can hear us and know what we're saying, but I don't know that. I can't say I know that. But still, we write. We communicate with them. Even when I go to when I go visit a grave, I do. I speak to the people who I'm visiting. I'm looking at the ground basically and just remembering and all that. Vicki Salloum made me think of these things because she's written a book called "Waiting for You at Midnight." It is everything. It is everything you would expect a conversation to be between a woman and her departed husband. What she's going through now in this. In the life after his death, she has to get on with her own life, and at the same time, has no problem sharing that with him. Grief and recovery is part of what we're talking about, and how a spiritual belief in the afterlife can ease the loss of a loved one. Vicki Salloum, this is a very thought-provoking and well-written, and happens to be funny at parts too, story. Good morning, Vicki.
Good morning. How are you, Larry?
I'm good. Yeah, it hits you from all angles, this particular story. So thank you for writing it.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed writing it.
Does it have a story behind the story? Did this come from someplace?
Actually, it did. My husband passed away. It'll be 3 years in September, and so right after he died, I really didn't have anybody that I could talk to honestly. I had people and they'd come and ask me how I'm feeling, and I'd say fine, and I knew they really didn't want to know how I was really feeling, and I didn't think it was proper to tell them.
Yeah.
But so all of this was sort of bottled up, and I just wanted to get out my feelings. So I would go to this park where my husband and I would go, and I'd get out this spiral notebook, and I'd kind of start writing to him about what was really going on with me. And that was just that was the beginning of this. It's a novel. It's not autobiographical, but a lot of it is just the imagination. So that was the beginning of it, and I got out everything I felt, and I was writing to him.
So as you're writing it, and now as we read the book and understand the characters, do you, in real life, and do the characters in the book, do they feel like he hears it, or does that not matter? Does it not matter whether he does or doesn't?
I really do believe he knows everything that's going on, but I don't really think about that so much. Mm-hmm. I just feel absolutely that he knows what's going on.
Did it help you? Did communicating with him that way help you?
It just helped so much to be able to write out my real feelings. In this world, you don't really say everything that's inside of you. You don't want to do that with people. It's ridiculous. And so you really need to get out these feelings, and you need to get them out with somebody that you trust, and you're not afraid of saying anything. And he was the one person, my best friend, I feel like I could just tell everything to. So it made me feel so good to be able to write this. It was like a diary.
And when you're a caretaker for someone, you're usually there 24/7, and you had expressed that there were a couple of times that your emotions took over and you wished they wouldn't have.
Yeah, is this Robin?
Yes, it is.
It absolutely. You know, I was so tired when I was taking care of my husband, and I'm not the best caregiver in the world. Uh-oh, my cat's trying to go out, but I'm going to ignore her. I'm not the best I am not the best caregiver in the world, and I was tired, and I just sometimes would be impatient, and I just so regret that now. You know, if I had it to do over again, I would get more sleep. I would get somebody to watch him at night while I slept, so I could be able to be more loving. And I regret that, but I can't go back and take it back because I think he understands, because most of the time I was pretty good to him.
Do you ever feel like you have communication from him?
Never. I never feel that way. But my husband never communicated that much.
That's kind of funny.
We were pretty much soulmates, but he didn't have to say much. I didn't have to say much.
That is interesting. So, in the book, the character Arabella, right? That's the name?
Yeah.
Okay. She's going through some alcohol issues, correct?
Yeah. She's a recovering alcoholic. She's been sober for over 20 years. She's an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous.
And that's where she meets some of the fellas that she also communicates to her former husband about, right?
Yeah, Arabella, in the days following her husband's death, this is a weird thing. I never knew that this happened with widows, but I guess it's pretty normal for some widows. You feel so alone, and you feel like you want to find somebody to take your husband's place. You want your life to go on the way it used to be, to find somebody to love. So she was very needy, and there were guys in the program that were paid attention to her. She paid attention to them. And eventually she wanted to go out with them, and so she had some relationships all the time trying to find somebody to take her husband's place. But she really wasn't thinking straight. You know, grief will do that to you. And so she made a lot of wrong choices, and that's part of what the book is about. A lot of the mistakes she made in her effort not only to live a worthwhile life, but to live an honest life. She was just the people who are just crushed after a loved one dies and their spirit dies. But this woman, she just goes raging into the night to try to make a good life for herself and to find things in life that are beautiful, you know.
And there are always the people that prey, P-R-E-Y, on the widows as soon as the woman becomes widowed, and then after the funeral, maybe a month or so will pass, and then some men will come down and, you know, try to get the woman to invest in things, or else they try to be their best friend, and they're not genuine at all. All they want is the money.
Yeah, but that really wasn't what was going on in my book. The guys she had relationships with, they were wrong for her, but I don't think any of them were really after her money. They, you know, there was one guy, he was kind of a predator, but he loved all the ladies. You know.
Oh, I know him.
Yeah. So he loved all the ladies, and she was looking for one person, her soulmate, and it was a terrible combination.
And she thought she knew Logan, but then she also found out he had secrets.
No.
Who was Logan?
No, Logan.
Am I getting him mixed up?
Well, Logan was her husband.
Right.
But she met him immediately when she came when she joined Alcoholics Anonymous. She actually sat at a table next to him, so she knew him. And they would go out for coffee, and he immediately told her he had robbed banks. He didn't hide anything from her. And but still they got together, and 4 years later they married, and then they were married for like well over 20 years. But he never really hid the fact of who he was. He was a really honest person.
Did writing the book give you a way of buttoning up if that's a bad expression, but I don't even like the word closure. But did writing the book give you a way to put an ending to what you were going through?
I think that it just gave me something wonderful to do in all those months and years when I was grieving. It was just everything I needed to do because I was in pain, just as Arabella was in pain all the time. And the idea that I'm a writer, and the idea that I could write about this was the greatest thing that could happen to me every day. And it did, it did sort of give me closure because I felt like this was a gift to my husband who passed away. I think he would see that as my tribute to him. So it was kind of like I did this. And then I never really thought about publishing it, but a writer always thinks about publishing it. And after it was finished, I thought somebody else could get something out of this, somebody who's in pain. I wish I had something like this to read, when I was going through this. So, that's what happened.
Well, you have a nice perspective on on the area of romance, because when you brought out when we're young and everything, we think that romance is everything, and then the young people look at the older people thinking that romance doesn't exist in their life anymore, but it does.
Yes, and that was such a shock to me to realize. I was that young person who thought you don't feel romantic after a certain age, but it shocks me to realize that that's just not true at all. I personally feel like inside I'm 18 years old, and that's a shock to me.
Yeah. I think you're right, but I think the perception of others, and especially when you're not that age, if you're younger, is that you look at the older folks, and Robin and I are up there with you as well. I don't know how old you are. It sounds like you're actually younger than us, but
no, I don't think so.
No, but anyway, it sounds like women have a stigma, and so do men. The stigma on women is that you've had your love life. You really don't need anybody else for those purposes, for intimacy purposes. But a man who's got the stigma of a man is that he's a widower, and now he's just a dirty old man. He's right. You can't win if you're older and you're single. You can't win. You're kind of categorized in unfair ways, right?
In my life, I don't know anybody who really talks about these things. And I have cousins. They're all widows, the women, and they have no interest in dating. I mean, their husband they worship their husband. Their husbands are dead, and now they have their grandchildren. They have their lives with their grandchildren, and they're just not interested in dating. And we really don't talk about it, but I kind of thought that's what you're supposed to do when you're widowed. You're not supposed to really think about men, that it's shameful. But I'm here to tell you there must be some other people out there who
of course,
want to go out with men and have a relationship.
What if you could somehow think from the other side, if we could do this just for a second, it was almost as a game. I think that if I was dead and I could see this side, I think I would be saying to everybody who felt like they can't go on without me, I think I'd be saying, no, go on, do your life, live your life. I don't think I'd be telling anybody to hold back on something they had a desire to do.
Larry, my husband and I never talked about what would happen after he died, so we never really talked about that. But all I know is that when I was taking care of him all those months when he was so sick, and it was like the atmosphere of death is in the air, and you're so heartbroken that he's going to leave you, and there's dying in the room. And I don't know if there's anybody who cherishes life more than caregivers who know what it is like when life is about to leave. You want so much to seize life because you know how fleeting it is and how precious. And that's the way I feel now. I just want everything that's good in life, whether it's a romance or whether it's just laughter or what is beautiful, because I know that life is just so precious.
When when a person is, has like alcoholism and they go to AA and then they don't touch a drink and then they experience a bad situation like this, knowing that they're going to lose their spouse, how do they keep from going back to drinking and keep on the straight and narrow?
People in the program, in order to, in AA, and I'm in AA, some people in Alcoholics Anonymous, they know that they really need to go to meetings as often as possible, because those meetings are really their medicine. You hear other people's experiences, and they support you, and there are steps that you follow to live, a spiritual life. That is really the answer to not going back to alcoholism.
Vicki Salloum is our guest, and I found her book, Waiting for You at Midnight, on Amazon, and I also found your website. It is your name, VickiSalloum.com, and I just put a picture up on the podcast that we're doing of this interview right now, of a photo of you from that site. How do you have some other books? Tell me about some of the other books. Were they written before your husband died?
Oh, yeah. All three of them were. A Prayer to St. Jude, and then there was Faulkner and Friends, and then there was Candyland. Faulkner and Friends is about a woman who has, for all her life, has wanted to start a bookstore. So she actually starts a bookstore in the Irish Channel of New Orleans, and all sorts of misfits come into that store and become her friend.
Oh, wow.
And the first one I wrote was A Prayer to St. Jude, and it was about this Seventh Ward neighborhood in New Orleans, and it was being taken over by a teenage drug gang, and it's from the perspective of the neighbors, what they go through, and how they deal with the teenage gang. And the last one I wrote, the most recent, was Candyland, and it's about it's about a 17-year-old Puerto Rican girl who lives in the Treme in New Orleans, and her parents manufacture crystal meth, and her brothers sell it. And the book is about this 17-year-old trying to save the life of another teenager who owes money to her brothers. It's my only crime fiction.
Are you in New Orleans? Are you in New Orleans now? Is that where you live?
Yeah, I'm originally from Gulfport, Mississippi, but I've lived in New Orleans for many years.
Do you think, I think that because you've written so honestly in this book, that I think some of the stereotypes about women who have lost their spouses are going to disappear, because women do need to continue living.
I didn't really know what would be the reaction to this book. It's just so raw, and I kind of had reservations about it once it was published, but it was just so honest, and so what? I mean, it's one person's story, and I wanted to get it out and just to see what happens.
And it does seem that the reverse is also totally opposite, because when a man loses his spouse, it just seems like it's totally different than when a woman loses her spouse. Everybody seems to be clamoring around the man and encouraging him to go out and do different things. Yeah,
and I don't know how you feel about it, but in my life, nobody really talks about these things. The women, they go on with their lives. I don't see a whole lot of them dating. The men go out and they get married like 3 months later, and it's just done. But I would love to just be able to talk to people about how they feel about that, about women who really are just so hungry for another relationship, and they really, and it's not that they're looking for sex, it's that they're looking for a moral kind of love, they're looking for something good. And it's not anything to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I don't think we should be ashamed of, even if it is looking for sex. I think that's
No.
part of life. Do you know what I would say though? I mean, if I was the friend of somebody who was going through this, I would say you got to live your life without worrying about what other people think, because other people who don't do things because of what other people think are shortchanging themselves. I believe in God, and I believe that God wants us to live a fulfilled life. And I don't think he wants us to say, well, I'm not going to do this because other people think poorly of me, or I don't want to have sex with somebody because God is going to look down on that. No, he's not. Come on.
No, you can't be lonely.
I mean, it's like eating. I shouldn't have that hamburger. Why not eat the hamburger?
Yeah, you have to not be lonely.
Yeah, my idea is that the only thing that really matters is the choices you make. It doesn't really matter what other people think, and my attitude has been like that for a good while. I don't really care what other people think. I only care that I make the right choices.
And I think Robin's point also, that those who read the book will be influenced in a positive way by the story, because I think that's what you're showing. I think a lot of time, and the sense of humor that you've injected into the book also speaks very clearly to the point of, we do have a life outside of whatever other people think our life should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just reminded of my grandmother. My grandmother came from Lebanon, and she married her husband when she was 15. She came over to this country and married him, and he was much older. And she had 5 children before she was 21 years old. And there was this great traditional conservative values. And when he died, she just wore black for the rest of her life. I mean, she lived with my bachelor uncle. She mourned his death for the rest of her life. And I don't think we need to be like that. I think God gave us this life to enjoy. He wants us to seize joy and laughter and everything.
I think so too. What a very honest conversation you've had with us, Vicki. It's like you're talking to somebody you've known for a long time. You're very open. Are you this open with everybody?
I think, well, I'm not this open with my family. My family, I love them, but I don't really talk about real things with my family. We love each other, but we don't talk about real things. With my best friends, I talk this way.
But if your family reads the book, these conversations might happen.
I know. I can't imagine what they're
Well, guess what?
They're not ready for this book, I don't think.
You want to know something, Vicki? It's just a hunch. My hunch is that when they realize that you would love to have these conversations, they'll say, gosh, I've wanted to talk like this forever. I think it'll open up a whole new line of conversation between you and the closest members of your family.
I think you're so right. I really do.
And it won't just help you, but it will help them as well, because sometimes we have questions and we don't want to carry on a conversation with those closest to us.
I really think that we need to, all of us, try to be more real with everybody and not just hide how we're really feeling, but that's a really hard thing to do.
Vicki, thank you for being on there with us today. I have a copy of the book waiting for you at midnight. If you would like the book that was sent to us, please call me right now, 622-9622, and I will leave the book here for you at the radio station. The rest of us have to go buy it. I did find it on Amazon, and it's getting really good reviews. Let me ask you, can you buy the book on your website?
No, so far you can just buy it on Amazon and some of the online bookstores.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to have it in some local bookstores here in New Orleans.
Okay, and I looked at your schedule on your website. You have some book signings coming up in your area, don't you?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Well, good luck with them, and enjoy this new chapter of your life, Vicki. It sounds like you've got a hold of it. And you're going to help other people get a hold of their own lives as well, too, is what I think.
I so enjoyed talking to both of you.
Oh, and thank you. So did we. All right, let's take a little break. We'll be right back. This is WOCA.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Chris Foster. President Trump at the NATO summit in Belgium complains again our allies don't spend enough on their own defense budget.
He's also launched a sharp public attack on Germany for its energy